brawls, not even a brawl, brawls, plural, breaking out at Giants training camp involving players and coaches, an offensive line coach. Oh, good Lord. This doesn't happen very often with a star quarterback. There's a clear leader. There is deference. By the way, the Saints have had one of these this year. The Niners, who don't have a star quarterback right now, right, because Garoppolo's not allowed to practice. The Giants have had one of these. It happens to good teams, too. But what you see, when you lack leadership, you have workplace meltdowns. I've had a couple in my career. The office, kind of blows up. It's not the employee's fault. It's not my coworker's fault. It's not my fault. It's a management issue. When you have a star quarterback, first of all, the offense usually controls practice. The bad spurts are short. The good spurts are long. And the star quarterback, again, has that authority where you don't get into that stuff when you have a star quarterback very often. When you don't have a star quarterback and you have a bad quarterback, you have to repeat stuff. Coaches get snarkier. Coaches get impatient. Players get impatient. Listen, it's August 9th, right? Like everybody wants to be very optimistic, but wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, offensive linemen, you can't fool professional football players. You can't fool professional athletes. Oftentimes, joy is my witness, I'll bring pro athletes, pro football players on the set, and I'll ask them, as a veteran player, when you see a rookie come into camp, how many practices does it take before you're like, guy can play, guy can't play? Almost to a player, they're like, yeah, 2 practices. Well, Daniel Jones been there a few years now, and he's not very good, right? And you can't fool the players, and they're getting frustrated, and offense is getting manhandled. Giants have a pretty good defensive front, and this is what happens. It spirals out of control. So you don't have a star player, and everybody in the building knows that at the most important position. Or my crazy idea could solve some of this. Bring in Jimmy Garoppolo. Colin, we don't have cap space. Figure it out. The Rams always do. Figure it out. The bad teams, the Bears, can never figure out the cap. The good teams, the Saints and the Rams, always do. Figure it out. Jimmy Garoppolo's been to Super Bowls. All the players know it. Jimmy Garoppolo's won 70% of his starts. He just beat Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau. Is Jimmy Garoppolo Josh Allen? No, he's not, but he wins a lot of football games and a lot of big football games that the Giants watch on TV because their season was really over in week 9. It's August 9th. It's melting down. I do not believe this would be happening if Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes were quarterbacks for the New York Giants. When you're lacking leadership, it becomes finger pointing. You put Jimmy Garoppolo in there, and if you struggle with Jimmy G, guys got to point fingers at themselves. Guys got to look in the mirror. That guy's won. That guy elevated Deebo Samuel. That guy helped make George Kittle a Pro Bowler. That guy beat Aaron Rodgers. That guy gives the Rams trouble. Maybe it's us. So when you get quarterback right, this is why I've never had a problem for like the Niners rolling the dice and giving up 3 picks for Trey Lance. It's a lot, but if you get it right, you're set for 12 years. I mean, I remember years ago when Washington drafted RG3 in the first pick and they drafted Kirk Cousins in the 4th round and they gave up a ton of picks and everybody freaked out. They won a division. Despite all that, despite RG3 not really working out, giving up all those picks, they won a division a few years later, I believe. They were competitive. You can give up. The Rams don't even have a first-round pick. When's the last time the Rams had one? If you get the quarterback right, it smooths out practice. It smooths out arguments. It shortens crises. Everything is easier. And right now, you got coaches fighting, players fighting, because there's no deference. There's no star. The ugly moments in practice last longer. And the idea that Daniel Jones is, even with this smart new coaching staff, is going to suddenly become an accurate thrower of the football, I do not buy it. Years ago, you gave a quarterback 3 full seasons. Years ago, you didn't have all these 7-on-7 camps. Years ago, you didn't have all these summer workouts. Kids didn't have quarterback mentors and coaches. So I'll give a guy, my feeling is, if I get a year of you, by the second year, Thanksgiving, I've made a decision. I don't need to go public with it, but I've sat down with my GM, my scouts, and my coaches, and I'm like, he's the guy or he's not the guy. It took us 2 hours in Justin Herbert's first start to figure out he was the guy. 2 hours. Remember that? They walked up to him right before the game against the Chiefs. The Chiefs, Mahomes, they said, hey, Tyrod Taylor had a medical problem. Can you start? By halftime, we were all like, whoa, broken play. Kyler Murray first start. Whoa, guy can play. Joe Burrow, second start. Doesn't take that long. In 2022, second year Thanksgiving, we know now what it is. And what it is a problem. It is a problem. So you think that Jimmy G thing doesn't make any sense. Sticking with this, doesn't make any sense. All right. So speaking of New York, you guys think I lean to California on my show. We're talking Brooklyn now. I am reading this morning. I went on the Angry Bird app, Twitter, and I went and found all these New England Patriot reporters in Boston. It's a big city with a pretty tough media. But, when you cover a team for 20 years and they're the gold standard of the sport, it's much tougher to take your whacks at Belichick. Zach Cox, it's been ugly. The offense is ugly. Tom Curran, perpetually overwhelmed offense. Mike Reese, who I work with. It might be time to give Dante Scarnecchia a call for an independent evaluation. Greg Bedard's a pro. Arguably the worst start of offense to camp. Phil Perry, offense looks broken. It was apparently, and for all of the, and then I got a rundown of the plays, and they couldn't complete anything 3 yards downfield. It was just a disaster. And I was thinking about this. If you were, let's say you were a head coach in the NFL, and you'd had a dynasty, and you really privately did not like the owner, because the owner did something one time that really ticked you off, and you had your money, you had your legacy, you had your rings, and you were trying to sabotage the organization. Let's just pretend here. What would you do? If you were trying to sabotage it, you'd first of all tick off your superstar quarterback and he would leave town. Well, that happened. You'd have your legendary older coaches retire at the same time. Get out of the building. Ernie Adams, Dante Scarnecchia. You'd bring back failed coaches and then put them in positions to fail. Matt Patricia, offensive coordinator, now that he's never done that. You would have really strange drafts where players have no real value around the league when you leave. Overpay for marginal free agents, they did that last year, that handicaps you, at least in the short term, for mobility financially. And by the way, let go of really great players at key positions that have increasing value over the last 5 years. Cornerback J.C. Jackson. Well, they did all of those. I am in no way saying Bill Belichick privately doesn't like Robert Kraft, although I've read it in books. What I am saying is, if you were trying to sabotage a NFL team, I think this is what you would do. A dynasty. I mean, how many bad moves can they make? I mean, there's no precedent for taking a defensive coordinator who bombed as a head coach and moving him to offensive coordinator. We don't have a precedent for that. You wouldn't do that in high school. Even in high school, you'd be like, yeah, it's a defensive guy. We're not going to put Bob on running the offense. He's a defensive guy. Especially with a second-year quarterback who needs support. Look at how the Bengals treat Burrow and the Chiefs have treated Mahomes, and how the Bills, even with a defensive coach, once again keep giving Josh Allen better coaches, more support, drafting offensive linemen, another wide receiver. Patriots are going the opposite way. And I'll tell you, it really feels like Blockbuster at the end, where you have this business and they're doubling down and they're just the Hulus and the Amazons and the Netflix, and they're doing another business. And that's the Chiefs and the Rams and the Niners and all these smart offensive teams. They're literally in another business. And New England is even drafting Mac Jones. Mac Jones is old school. What you're not looking for in 2022 is a slightly undersized pocket passer with no ability, once the play breaks down, to make anything happen. Even the drafting of Mac Jones feels like it's old school and past sort of its time. It is, I mean, the Patriots have no feel for offense. How do I know that? They currently have the most expensive receiving core in the NFL and arguably the worst. I mean, you can say what you want about the Packers receiving core. They got a couple of rookies here, and Sammy Watkins was good. Randall Cobb was good, but they're past their prime. I mean, we got nobody here. So it is, I mean, honestly, if you were trying to sabotage it, it would look like this. Tick off Brady, overpay for average free agents, weird draft, 2 brilliant coaches, old guys out, put guys in positions that are obviously in the NFL's never been more offensive leaning. Maybe you could have done this in 1968 or 74. The idea that a defensive coach is going to run your offense, I think this organization does not have a feel for offense. How can you pay this much money for wide receivers and not have a single guy that can separate? Devontae Parker from Miami, they let him go. Of 131 receivers in the NFL, Warren Sharp, who does analytics, smart guy, said he separated less than any other receiver the last 2 years. So I don't know. Obviously, I'm doing this a little tongue-in-cheek with a sabotage thing, but I mean, at some point, football's not that complicated. You take care of your star quarterbacks. If you get a young quarterback, you do everything you can with coaching, offensive line. You don't let Shaq Mason go. You draft a lot of receivers. You get really, really high-end wide receivers. You don't go cheap at wide receiver. And you certainly, in a division with Josh Allen, don't let go of your best corner. Yikes, I don't get it. I just do not get it at all.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.